Hey, it's Chris. Board Game News. What do you need to know? A couple big things going around in case you didn't drink any of that Kool-Aid this week. So, what do you need to know? What's new? What's hot? What's making waves? Because let's start with the first one. Upper Deck. Ravensburger. House of Mouse in trouble? Question mark? Lorcana. Ravensburger. They're getting sued by Upper Deck. Apparently, one of the designers that used to work at Upper Deck went over to Ravensburger, and the alleged lawsuit says something along the lines of they basically copied the design that was under contract from Upper Deck and made it into Disney's Lorcana. Now, House of Mouse versus the Upper Deck that built the House of Legendary, you know? This is an interesting standpoint. And a lot of people were very quick to come out, guns a-blazing. Boom, 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 boom. I got this side. I agree with, you don't have a freaking clue is really what the truth of the matter is. Because when you pour over the details of the lawsuit, there's going to be some frivolous stuff in there, right? Because you're going to grasp at anything you can. But there are some very, very legitimate nuggets in there as well. Because this is where the copyright, because you can't copyright game design. Well, you can. It's just you can't copyright certain aspects of it. And this isn't just coming from me as well. Like, I'm looking out there on our armchair lawyers, a couple of which are actual lawyers on the board game industry side of things, commenting on this, right? One of the folks over Restoration Games made a very interesting tweet thread kind of running through this thing, basically saying it's standard practice to allege every possible cause of action you can based on the facts. Yeah, you're gonna have a lot of those fall away based on dismissal when you're doing the summary judgment side of things. Very apropos. The interesting thing that we don't know, which was not attached to the lawsuit at all, is what is the contract of the designer itself? What details does or doesn't it have in there? Because if I was a layperson, that would be the main crux of the argument that I would think of, is that do they have something in the contract that says something along the lines of anything you develop while working for us is our property? Obviously with more technical and more detailed language, but ipso facto, if that's in there, right? The other interesting thing that was noted in this lawsuit was the claims actually against Ravensburger, in case you haven't read it. In particular, tortuous interference and unfair practice claims over a broad range of conduct and various forms in the first place. And they even go on to say in this Twitter thread, being very clear, because this is the splitting difference, right? You can't copyright, you can patent a specific mechanic if it meets the criteria, i.e. new, non-obvious, and useful. Obviously, you have to be very specific about that at the same time. And the most interesting aspect of this is if you look at the complaint, the very last part of the complaint, for injunctive relief enjoining Ravensburger from publicly releasing Lorcana, right? Lorcana, which is basically a month and a half from being released. We are not that far out from Gen Con. We are not that far out from wide availability at this point. People have played it at conventions. It's more to be released to the general public very soon, relativistically speaking. And all of a sudden, they want to stop it from being released altogether. Again, I don't know how much Disney is going to play into this, if this is going to be a Ravensburger thing. You know the House of Mouse has their own super uber powerful lawyer system, so are they going to step in? Is this going to be a situation? I have no idea. Smarter legal minds than I, because I'm not very smart in either of those aspects, are going to see where this goes. I'm going to be watching it regardless. Speaking of disasters, though, we have to go straight over to a crowdfunding disaster, because that's the other news that kind of came out. It's sort of leaking out. Like, I'm talking about this way too frequently nowadays. Chang'an, January 2021. I remember I covered this actually in one of my first lookbacks of last year of games. I was like, yeah, that kind of looks solid. And many people have noticed that MIA, Dear Publishing, there hasn't been an update from the company, Dear Games, since January. So 5 months, okay. Now they say they're going to do monthly updates in that update, but slightly concerning for a game that, again, raised not a ton of money, but all too much to have this, not hurt in some way, shape, or form with 70,000 euros and nearly 1,600 backers. And if you're not familiar with it, here it is, 22 stretch goals. The update really is unrevealing from January, basically saying, hey, we're trying to find alternative production over in China, blah, 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 blah. But if you go over again to the comment section here, and they make it very clear in this copy of the letter that they don't hold active positions within the publishing company. They're all external. They're all not part of it, officially. Contractors, essentially, if you will. They've not received all of their compensation, financial damage to them, and obviously playing into the game's delayed production. And they're not really hearing from them either, essentially, is what they're saying here. And there's not a whole lot of other details. And this was, 3 days before I filmed this. And I think this is maybe even a copy and paste from a little bit older. But for a game that, again, if you go back over to the campaign page here, was supposed to be fulfilled at the end of 2022. Again, only 6 months over. Still plenty of time to make it within, as I was just filming recently, the June 2022 and June 2021 look backs, games that are over a year and a half overdue. So that's not a huge issue, but the no response in almost 6 months, raising some flags. Disaster written all over it, unfortunately, but hopefully it still has some time to be saved. So take that for what you will. You probably don't care. You're probably not paying attention. You probably didn't even get this notice, but it's making waves in all the right ways because Kingdom Death Monster, remember that? Remember the Kingdom Death Monster 1.5, the previously highest funding finally of all time before Frosthaven came around? Well, they finally, Kingdom Death Monster has come back to backers because they just announced the Gambler's Chest. The Gambler's Chest, basically the stretch goal box of this whole campaign, is done production-wise. It's going to be shipping really soon. Finally. And to be clear, if you're not familiar with this at all, the Gambler's Chest basically is bigger, it appears, than the core of Kingdom Death Monster as a whole. And why is that such a big deal? Well, Chris, it's 6 years since the actual crowdfunding date finished. Well, yeah, it is. This Gambler's Chest, though, went for, $50 or so during the original campaign. Again, bigger than the Kingdom Death Monster core right now. We don't even know what's in half of it. Value-wise, the original backing of this crowdfunding campaign is second to none. If you got some of those original expansion and before they basically went up every single year in the pledge manager because Poots is just adding more and more and more stuff, you have a great, fantastic deal. The problem is if you try and get in now, again, you're going to kind of miss out. And they've kind of said, well, maybe you can get a copy at some point, but we're also not going to guarantee it. So I would imagine you're also going to see a lot of those coming up in the secondary market for people who are just kind of not wanting it anymore as well. I don't know what I'm going to do with mine yet, to be frank. I didn't really get any of the other expansions through the pledge manager with one of the guys that I did locally a group pooling with. And so I don't really have anything else coming after that, essentially. I think I have a couple of the small miniatures, which are going to be in 2030. But apart from that, it's just massive news. And they blew it up with a huge update on the Kingdom Death crowdfunding page. I'm not kidding here. This is literally one of the biggest crowdfunding updates I've ever seen. Now, granted, it's a lot of pictures, but look at how big this thing is. This is insane. That's what you're getting there. And I wish they had a comparison to what it is. And they kind of give you a little bit of an update on where all the other expansions are. A few of them, this is the one that skyrocketed up. Campaigns of Death is something like $200 or $400 now. That it was again, a $50 during the campaign. But the only two things that they're actually otherwise close with is the Black Knight and the Frog Dog, which were the ones that they previously demoed, I believe, at Gen Con. And they're going to have something else as well demoing at Gen Con here this time, in addition, upcoming in this fall. And it kind of goes into it right here. I forget what they say. It doesn't actually say it here. It says it somewhere else. And then they run you through. But then he gives all of these Kickstarter answers. The vignette, here we go. The Kelenium Butcher. So they may take pre-orders with it. No idea where it is, though. Pillar point system is new proficiency, no. They give all this other stuff of answers. This is the most extensive answers to anything I've ever seen in this. And it's sad that it's basically taken 6 years to get half of these answers because some of them are relevant and some of them would have been useful years ago. But anyway, that is by far and away the biggest news coming out this week. And I just wanted to highlight on it. Whether or not it's applicable to you, that's a whole nother issue. But there you go. Now, we have a whole bunch of other new licensing projects that we have to talk about because a couple of these are going to be names that you're going to know. Renegade Studios just upped their relationship status with Hasbro. You may remember the failed or semi-failed, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it, HasLab crowdfunding page for Heroscape. Well, Renegade's putting out more of their stuff now. Renegade has an official agreement with them to produce more Heroscape, to do more active management of not only the game, but also the community. Online organized communities, organized play support, as well as quote-unquote a future world championship. Hobby stores are getting more points of interest to be able to attract people into their store, essentially. Going with the hand-in-hand, I help you, you help me sort of thing there. And we're going to see where it goes, because you're going to get more. All new content, introduction of terrain packs, faction boxes, and more. So we'll see what Renegade and Hasbro can come up in store. Is it actually going to be a decent price point? I kind of don't mind at times the Restoration Games is slightly more restored versions of games, but they definitely are making a more premium product, and it's not always as widely available with some of these editions of like Fireball Island, as well as the more recent Thunder Road Vendetta. Like if you just can't get Maximum Chrome, you just can't get Maximum Chrome, right? Because there weren't a ton of exclusives, but there were enough to make you go, you know? So obviously this is going to be retail. I would hope it's going to be all retail. It doesn't say in this little press release that they've released, but we'll see. And as someone who never got into this, is this going to get me back into it? I know a lot of people like it for nostalgia reasons, speaking of Restoration Games, but does it hold up and stand the test of time? I don't think lack of nostalgia was why it necessarily failed on their little crowdfunding individual website. I think it was just, okay, why am I going to play this over all the other, you know, more newly innovative things have come out? So show me not only what you can do with the nostalgia, but what you can do to improve things as well to make it a little bit more modern, a la, speaking again of restorations. So say what you will, but doing a good job of not only taking it, but taking it and bringing it more relevant. So that's number one. The other side of things, Defenders of the Realm is getting a new edition. Greater Than Games is giving us something new along this line of games. Fantasy heroes, card building, card driven, point-to-point movement, asymmetric die rolling hand management. Yeah, you know, your stereotypical fantasy-esque setting, but the combat, the system was relatively well thought of with the number of expansions that went along with it as well. So we're going to see. I'm assuming with Greater Than Games, this is going to be a backer kit sort of situation coming before the end of the year, but there aren't really a whole lot of other details yet at this point either. That's one. We're also seeing a new Wallace design from Martin Wallace, and we're getting Fighting Fantasy Adventures, Campaign 1. I guess this is based on an iconic book series of the same name. I didn't know that. I'd never heard of it, but apparently a lot of fanboys did. And these are 4 solo adventure books into a card game format. Now, I would imagine, as per Bloodstone, which was the previous Martin Wallace game we saw come to crowdfunding over on GameFound, that it's going to go a similar route from that aspect. And it appears to even have a date. We're looking at July 1 for the crowdfunding campaign. There's a prototype that has pictures over on the Board Game Geek forum, as well as, I believe, a module online that you can already check out as well. So, again, sort of a story DM-less style RPG game. 4 adventures that are going to be offered. The Board Game Geek page actually lists them out right now, so you can see which ones they are. Apparently there are tons of books, so people were questioning which ones are going to be adaptable. It's The Warlock of Firetop Mountain, Island of the Lizard King, Death Trap Dungeon, and the Forest of Doom. So how is this going to be different? How does this compare to like the Pathfinder style of card-driven RPG games? Is it going to be better, worse? What is going to be unique? What's going to be updated? What's, again, going to make it relevant to play over other stuff in your own collection already right now? So that's what we got to talk about and find out. Speaking of upcoming crowdfunding games, I just saw this one as well, too. Just recently announced. Did you ever want to be a Smurf? A blue Smurf. Yes, that's what I'm talking about, folks. Smurfs Hidden Village is coming to crowdfunding later this year. A cooperative game where you're rebuilding Mushroom Village, following the attack of the evil Gargamel. Yep, I'm Gargamel. Yep. So thankfully my kids haven't had the chance to see this too much, except for the fact that they saw the live action movie. Again, it's like Garfield live action, right? But apparently, again, they're going to see some nostalgia factor with this one. I'm going to go out on a limb here. Miniatures, right? But is it going to be a pandemic style? It's going to be cooperative. It's going to be 1 to 5 players. No idea. No news. No details yet, so we'll kind of see where it goes, except for the actual announcement of the game going to be coming soon. So we'll go from there. Interestingly, going back over to the House of Mouse now, we have Ravensburger on the other end of things with more recent product announcements. not only a new expansion for Villainous filled with fright. Obviously, you're going to have Jack Skellington from 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. And then you're also going to get Oogie Boogie. So you're going to be taking on head-to-head, and now you can combine it with a standalone game. The other interesting aspect that came out of this was that they're redoing the core. There's going to be a new edition of the core to streamline things and to make it more appealing to the general audience. So if you've been holding out on this game, maybe wait for that even a little bit further. But I don't know how much further you would streamline a core in this game in the first place, so we'll kind of see. And I think that there's a little bit of detail out there if you want to go check it out and see, but you can probably then pick it up on the secondary market if you have an original copy for even cheaper than what the new one's going to cost you. So especially if it's mostly aesthetic and mostly streamlining stuff, you're probably going to not miss out on any gameplay. So it might be better off just getting the first edition and waiting for someone to sell you a copy cheaper. One of the other more recent announcements that just came out over this weekend, if you are a solo junkie, well, have you played Final Girl? Have you finished Season 1? Have you finished the more recently delivered Season 2? Well, Van Ryder just announced, that's right, Season 3. More details coming up at Gen Con, but there will be a Season 3. There will be other details available. There will be other things to go along with it because it's going to come back to crowdfunding, I think, sometime between now and the end of the year. So we'll see what that entails. Again, not a solo person. Don't play solo-only games like that. So easy pass for me, but I think people that have played it have relatively enjoyed it in the whole. So take that for what you will. Do you need more, though? I mean, it's like Marvel United. How many of those do you need? I say that because I can point the finger right back at myself and say, I buy them and I don't need them, right? And they're done that. Well, what else we got going on in the HoTnEsS since we have a little extra time at the end of the video today? Kinson Key Games is putting out Galactic Cruise while Ian O'Toole released some artwork of the box cover and it got a bunch of clicks, and so it shot up to the top of the HoTnEsS because that's just what kind of happens. The Witcher Old World is being delivered and being reviewed by a lot of people. Yours truly just got their copy this past week, so you're going to get a lot of clicks there and a lot of content coming out there. Archeos Society, which is the remake of Ethnos, the re-theme, if you will, just got released as well at retail side of things, so imagine you're going to see some HoTnEsS and some clicks and some reviews comparing the two, contrasting the two, and saying whether or not this is actually any better. I wasn't a huge fan of the first one in the first place, so take that for what you will. Invention Evolution of Ideas is launching today, the day that this is airing, so that's going to be on the HoTnEsS as well for the time being because it's the latest biggest Lacerda game from Eagle Gryphon Games. Beast has been delivering and in the process of being delivering and getting sort of mixed opinions from some people, very strong opinions one way or the other, and they've got their upcoming GameFound expansion sometime in the fall, I believe September. Heat's still on the top of the HoTnEsS as well because, well, the name gives it away, right? No, it finally got reprinted and is more widely available at retail, so people are checking it out there. Expeditions from Stonemaier Games is also making the HoTnEsS because their embargo lifted. I'd really like to get a copy. Firefly, the game, also just launched on crowdfunding this week, and I'll have more thoughts on the actual campaign over on GameFound right now, which is really doing gangbusters, as the 10th anniversary edition. Big Box, Earth, Ark Nova, Frosthaven are your usual stays. Darwin's Journey is in the process of getting a lot of clicks because also Dice Tower put out a review that had one of the main rules wrong, so they took it down, did a mea culpa, and are refilming, and there's going to be more clicks and attention when their new video gets posted eventually here in the next week or two, I'm guessing. And then Stalker, again, from Awakened Realms, just launched this past week as well. Full thoughts, full breakdown of the campaign tomorrow in the crowdfunding roundup as well. So that's it. That's the news roundup this week. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you thought. And, you know, again, where are we going to go with Lorcana? I don't think anything's going to happen, but it's an interesting case, interesting test point, especially in the market, because we don't see anything remotely close to this ever, especially in terms of size and IPs. So that's interesting. And Kingdom Death Monster. Don't know what else to say, right? It's going to be interesting. Grab your popcorn. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Tune in tomorrow. Crowdfunding roundup. Big names, big week. Breaking it all down for you. As always, tell them we sent you. Peace out. Stay classy.